For hippies, it was the best music station of all time. It was everything you wanted in a customer relationship. And one day they decided to change the format and went to like sophomoric humor. And like they were dead 3 months later. Like
Wow.
a radio station that had been around for generations was gone in 3 months. And that's what happens when you don't listen to your customers and do the right things.
Welcome to UX Murder Mystery. I'm Eve Eden.
And I'm Brian Crowley. And Eve, who's our guest today?
All right, you guys are in for a treat. We have a super nerdy Nashvilleian, Tod Fetherling. Welcome to UX Murder Mystery. We're so happy you're here, and we're going to talk about mass customization. But before we get into it, Tod has been, he is a author, speaker, a visionary when it comes to data, data sets, data analytics. For over the past 30 years, he's led teams as a CEO, CPO, and vice president of business development. He's focused on interactive marketing and even research. So we are thrilled to have him here. So welcome, Tod.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I love everything that you guys are doing around usability. And today's topic of mass customization is right in my wheelhouse.
Perfect. All right. So, one of the themes that we're going to be talking about today is around, just how personal communication has been, something that I think we've all been used to with just like emails that say your name, hello, and your first name, last name. That's always just been something that I think was very novel for us when we first, saw those types of templatization that happened, and, where it's been and where it's come to today. And so one of the things I'd like to discuss is, Target and its customer experience system when it comes to understanding its customers, and how it's treating its audience almost like one uniform persona. And with that, we'll kind of dabble a little bit into, what we've seen with Spotify's, wrap up feature and where those wrap ups have, popped up in other industries as well. And so with that, every company is going to have and wants to sell right now, especially with AI. Tod, when companies say personalization, what are they doing?
There's probably a couple levels of customization that most people are doing today. One would be they're taking their database of customer information and, just like you said, putting it back into an email or a year-end summary of, hello, Eve, we know you're looking for X product. Here it is. We found it available and here's the best price. Then the next level down would be those companies that take that information and then add data, third-party data onto that. So they know that Eve's also a high luxury brand, likes to travel 3 to 4 times a year, mostly goes to Europe. And so they're going to combine that information with other third-party information. And then I think the most sophisticated companies then take it to a third level and ask the individuals, what are their values? What are the things that you would like from a relationship with our company so that you can be fulfilled and then we can somehow make a profit at the same time? I think when we find those connections, that's when magic gets unlocked, tribes are formed, and then you see a lot of momentum.
Yeah. So where's that line between, almost like a real understanding and just kind of replaying data back to the users?
Yeah, so I think one of the first things that I see customers that are on this journey do is they start to segment their customers. They want to understand how different customer groups are purchasing, behaving, whether they're in store or online. We now have many boxes of the matrix to put people into, and especially when we come back and talk about target, we may talk about where some of those boxes were incorrectly labeled and didn't have a true understanding. So I think by clustering, there's programs like Tapestry that break households down into purchasing behavior as well as educational values, whether you're liberal or conservative. There's about 2,080 different attributes of every household in the US. The people who go to that second and third level are where you're going to find the most value to be unlocked in the customer relationship.
So when you're saying, just so we can kind of break it down for the audience and explain it a little better for the audience, is this similar to the concept of like 4-quadrant movies for the audience, where it's like you have, so 4 quadrants, I believe, typically means like there's young and old, and then there's like, I think there's like, they also splinter into like child and adults. Is that a similar type of concept?
Yeah, a lot of people will refer to that also as a 2x2 matrix, and those are really good. The problem with consumers is there's 68 boxes that you want to put people into. Now, some really smart brands go and create their own cluster profiles, and then you can maybe fine tune ordering pizza like what we did for Papa John's Pizza back in the early 90s, was to segment by market those, people who were ordering pizza 3 to 4 times a week, and they were doing it because they were time starved. So it was all about convenience, not about healthiness or anything else. It's, can you get a pizza to my house in 30 minutes? I'm in. Then we started to see differentiation between customers who would only buy when there was a discount coupon, customers that would only buy when there were healthy choices available. And so, like I said, it's a real customer journey for most organizations. And depending on how much time and money you want to spend on it, you can get to know each individual customers as an entity of one, even though there might be a million ones, and then clustering those million ones into some more routine boxes that you can use for sales and communication.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's make a quick bridge to what we've been seeing with end of the year wrap ups. I think we've been seeing this maybe commonplace, maybe 2 years, you guys. Maybe it's been 3. I don't know, but I've definitely seen it in the last 2. People are sharing them and, kind of wanting to have other people see like what their Spotify wrap up is. What we're seeing is these end of the year wrap ups are spreading everywhere. And why, Tod, why do they all feel the same right now?
Well, from my perspective, we're living in this age of me, and they made it really easy to make it about me while not saying "look at me." So pretty creative little twist there, in my view. Now, what would be even more interesting is if Spotify said, "Here's our review of you. Would you like to customize it to make it your own story?" Right? Then I could, take that. The other one I liked was LinkedIn, which showed me a lot of things that I knew intuitively, but it brought forward some connections that I haven't talked to in a while. I did reach out at the end of the year of those connections and said, "Hey, we haven't talked in a while. What's going on with you?" So I found it to be very useful to continue the engagement on LinkedIn. On Spotify, it was sort of like, yeah, this is what I listen to because this is what I've got programmed into my phone, right? I didn't find as many uniqueness, new things in there that I did as I did on LinkedIn.
Okay, yeah, that to me is like let's kind of do a drill down here. So with the LinkedIn feature, because it was something, did you feel like because it was something novel or exclusive to, let's say, LinkedIn's networking behavior that you actually like, followed through or took notice? What was that made that your experience with the LinkedIn wrap up special versus like let's say the Spotify?
I think it was because it revealed information about me that I wasn't aware of on my own.
Okay.
And so to me, that brought a lot of customer value to the equation. Like I said, Spotify didn't have as many surprises. Now, maybe it's because my music is so tight these days, but what would have been interesting is if Spotify combined my radio listening to my online listening to my Spotify account, then that might be really fascinating.
I think that the wrap up started with Spotify, but I've noticed that it has moved into, I saw it in Duolingo. I saw it also in a lot of video games, um, picked up that pattern. And, it seems to your point about like the making it about you, or it seems like it's more of a, I don't think folks realize that it's more of an ad for the app. It's more of an ad for the apps and the games and the services than it actually is a helpful insight. Whereas what you were just talking about like the radio, or like thinking of like, oh, if you like this music, try this music or something like that, would have been so much more useful to a user than just the servicing up the same kind of thing in the year-end wrap. It also, even you've talked about this a lot, which is the duplication, like the way in which all these companies just seem to like, as opposed to thinking up their new ideas or thinking up what problem does this solve, just being
Right.
like, well, they did it, so, and that there's some product manager or somebody in some room who's just like, well, I saw this, so why aren't we doing this?
Yeah, I mean, just to be brief here with that, it's almost like someone, developed a design system component and just did a copy and paste, right? And I've said this before, it's just instead of you really thinking through in an innovative way by giving your product owner, product managers, your designers, and your engineers some time to innovate how this is special, kudos to LinkedIn. Obviously, Todd likes, what you guys have incorporated, that surprise or that delight that we talk about with user experience that would almost like bring this, to a next level to show like, what, me spending time on LinkedIn is actually worth it. Me connecting with, let's say my music app so I can do whatever goal it is to do it further. Again, this is where you need your product management teams, your product teams that include designers and your software engineers to really like help innovate your company.
Yeah.
So as we kind of connect a little bit more and break this down, let's talk about what happens when companies think they understand their customer, but they don't, right? So something about, we were discussing, as we were kind of ideating on this topic is target and how brand can be built with good design and emotional connection, and then it may like fall off alignment. And so with that, was Target's issue in you know creating things for the masses, was that a problem or a failure to understand their customer at a deeper level because of the mass customs, this kind of like mass template that they were developing?
For me, I think they broke like the number one brand rule is to know and understand your customer. And partially, I would blame the politics of the age on some of this. But when they made the decision that they did on DEI, I think their customer base was more invested than they were in this concept. especially as we look at the products that Target, or as I like to call it, Target, because French sounds better. They lost some diversity in their product offering at the same time that they were dealing with this customer backlash to this. And had they done surveys, segmented their customers, understood why their customers were coming to them instead of Walmart or JCPenney or other big box stores, then I don't think they would have made this mistake. But I think they sort of took a knee-jerk reaction and got into a lot of problems that have cost a lot of revenue at this point.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I grew up in the South where there was Walmarts and Kmarts, and Targets tended to be more in your urban areas, in your cities and such. And so it's very interesting that they were like kind of disconnected from like who their audience was. I mean, just a couple of years ago when there was Pride in Chicago, I remember going down and we went to Target to buy our Pride t-shirts for the Pride Parade in Chicago. And so it's very strange that they were so disconnected from their base.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, let's state a few facts here. It looks like Target's comparable store sales fell by 3.8% in Q1 of 2025. Foot traffic also dropped 3.6% year over year, and their stock sat at 14% above where it was full a decade earlier. While let's say Costco is up 633%, and even Walmart is up 144%.
So a lot of those customers from Target that are part of the boycott of Target, Costco took the opposite tact. Costco said, we're sticking by our guns. We committed to this. We're hanging on to this. And so what happened was they moved over to Costco, which what an opportunity for Costco too.
Yeah. So let's talk about what signals get missed right before a company starts to lose alignment. Like this.
Yeah, and like branding, done hundreds of brand projects over the last 35 years. For me, brands always start with the employees. And so an early signal for me, if I was sitting in Target's management shoes, would have been when my employees started to walk out, and more of them were going remote. And so they had less face time with those individuals. And so there were a lot of dynamics happening around the same time that I think they should have sort of hit pause and said, hey, what's going on here? Like, let's go talk to our employees, our shoppers, and figure out, what can we do to make the buying experience delightful? That's what we all want at the end of the day, is to go buy things with our money and feel really good about it.
Yeah. I was at a company at the time that did a lot of listening tours with their employees. And to your point, Todd, I would have thought they would have started doing some listening tours if they hadn't already, and taken that in for consideration. Because there's nobody who's going to know better than the people who are cashiers, right? And the people who are your store managers.
Yeah, they're the ones that are literally front lines taking all that information in. And, unfortunately, what we don't have, and once again, I probably talk about too many things that are scary to people, but if I had ambient listening at the cashiers, think about the level of intelligence that Target could have to know 5 million people that came through our turnstiles today. Here's how many of them said thank you. Here's how many of them said cuss words. Here's how many of them said, hey, I can't find this anymore here. There's so much intelligence that is going on at the point of sale, in addition to just the transaction itself.
Totally.
Yes. Well, I think that's where you're touching on, is this mass customization. How are we going to see this play out in, let's say, our near future. Todd, do you have any, let's say with this idea of like ambient listening, or, what does, like, let's say there's a product manager listening in, and, let's a UX designer listening in, and they want to make an impact in their company. How do we do that well? Obviously, it could be various industries, but if we focus on e-commerce or kind of point of sale here, how would you kind of help them along so that they could make an impact with the skill set they have today?
Yeah, and I don't think many retailers use this today like they should. Certainly, healthcare's way behind the ball when we talk about this point of sale communication and customization that could go on. But like, let's say I buy milk every time I go to Kroger's, and I go to check out and I didn't get any milk. I could prompt the user to say, "Hey, did you need to get some milk while you're here?" Like, all of a sudden I'm be like, oh yeah, I totally forgot. Thank you so much. And then the other thing would be like upon entry of the store, like being able to use, this computer that we all hold in our hands. Um, hey, I've got 6 specials on things that you always buy today. Would you like me to point you to those? And where are there new things in the store from new vendors that I want to stay trendy, like in the case of
Right.
Target, that they no longer had because they abandoned some of their diversity in their supply chain. And those types of things I think are going to be where we take these technologies, and ambient listening would be another one, because if I can start to do sentiment analysis real time on you, like I should be able to have a much better proactive, productive conversation with you than I am if I have no idea where you're coming from.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing, just to kind of maybe do like a little drill down here as well, is that it seems that the companies are really focused on, obviously their revenue and growth. And, it's very capitalistic and very American to focus on that. And that to me is not really the issue. However, if it's in lack of understanding your customer base in order to meet numbers, just let's say even for a short-term thrill of, meeting a 22% growth in 2026, but lacking in what will happen the years following. What is that? And maybe, we don't have to like get too much into it, but what is that kind of short-term focus that makes almost like a blindness to what a long-term success?
I can put it in context of some examples I've seen over the years of good and bad. A bad one being we need to hit sales targets, so we start discounting, and target was met, but then profitability was severely damaged. And the customer relationship was also damaged because those people then always wanted to have a discount.
Oh, yeah.
And so all of a sudden we went from a trusted advisor to a discount house, right? And
Yeah.
that's something nobody ever wants. The opposite side of it, when I worked at Jack Daniels, Bill Street, who was the chairman at the time, had a new BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, that was announced to everybody at a national sales meeting, and like you could hear the room gasp because it was truly a BHAG. Interestingly enough, they met that BHAG less than 3 years later without any substantial changes in programs. They just got
Yes.
everybody in the company focused on this BHAG, and they used the same brand voice. They didn't lose sight of who they were. They did expand to some new countries as well. And so all of that, sort of was the beginning of the big bourbon revolution as we know it today.
Hmm.
Wow.
Very good. Yeah. So there is a real cost to misunderstanding your customer, right? From a revenue trust relationship. And so how does something like this ripple beyond just, let's say, the interface, right? We're talking about user experience, we're talking about digital products here. How does that ripple beyond just the interface?
Well, like in the case of Target, labor groups started advocating against Target's board and management team. Consumers started boycotting and getting organized. That's really interesting and fascinating. And so I think if you clearly don't understand where you're going, the ripple will be the loss of customers eventually. And then I think, Eve, you and I have talked about the total cost of customer value over the long-term equation. Well, the cost for you to keep that customer is about to dramatically go up, versus if you have a trusted relationship with that customer, getting them to buy 1 to 2 additional items that are already trending towards where they want to purchase, is far less costly on both your reputation, but also on the relationship with the customer.
Absolutely.
It's all, yeah, I mean, that's such a good point too, because it's, they made a commitment, and to go against the commitment to those customers that led to that boycott that's still ongoing, like regaining that trust or making a mea culpa is going to be it's going to be such a hard thing to do. I mean, we were just talking about coupons, right? And coupon deals, right? If you think about like minor inconveniences that we've all experienced with any type of customer situation, and when a company takes care of you, the loyalty that you feel towards that company. But when a company is not good to you, the way you feel about that company, that trust, that is the realm of the coin. This is the coin of the realm, and if you break that, oof, it's bad news.
Yeah, let's talk for a minute about automotive dealers. I had a
Yeah.
very interesting experience recently where I was trying to buy a car, and multiple car dealers I went to said, this is our everyday price, sort of like Walmart does, but Walmart's everyday low price. And so then I got there and I tried to buy a car, and they start adding on packages. I'm like, hold on, you told me you had one price. Now you're trying to load up packages on top of this. Like, you can't have it both ways. So I left. I went to another place and I said, I want this car. I don't care about any packages. They were like, fine, done. I was in and out in 30 minutes. I'm like, okay, great experience. You did exactly the same thing as the other person, but when we start educating consumers to be more sophisticated, like, we also have to be ready for that customer to grow with us or walk away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right.
great point.
Yeah, I love that. We might need to do a podcast on how you got 30 you bought a car in 30 minutes. I need to know more. That's insane. Usually that's like a 5-hour torture session.
Yeah.
So with these quiet failures that companies are ignoring, and obviously this isn't just Target, it's showing up everywhere. Let's talk about the subscription model. Todd, you brought this up when we were talking last about, this kind of one click, sign up, right? And but in order to unsubscribe, it definitely is a process. So, you called it, I think when we were talking last, bordering on criminal, which I completely agree. What does that say about how companies actually think about their people? I mean, we can call them users, but I like calling them people because I think it makes it, more human.
Yeah. And I find this parallel to Miracle on 34th Street, the movie, where Kris Kringle's like, hey, by the way, go over to Burksdale. They've got it, for a little less, and they have it in stock today and we don't. And people are like, oh my God, you're sending people to your competitors. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't have it. And so I should make my customer journey really awesome. And they'll come back and spend 3, 4, 5x with me because I'm a trusted source, right? When I go to unsubscribe for a program that I didn't even know I subscribed to, and I go to the website, I look for the unsubscribe, I can't find it. I then go to my account settings. I can't find anything there. I have to call somebody and go, hey, I want to get out of this program. And they're like, oh, well, you just go do this. And I go, no, I followed all your steps, pretty sophisticated online user, and I can't unsubscribe. Well,
Right.
keep going. I go, what do you mean keep going? Well, there's like 8 screens that you have to get through to unsubscribe, but there's one button to click. Of course, the FTC is trying to do this with click to cancel regulations. California, the first state, probably not surprising, that has adopted something similar, but it is going to become criminal not to make it as easy to unsubscribe as it is to subscribe. But I would challenge all product managers, like, why should you wait until the government forces your hand to be a good customer people steward? Like, that should be in our human nature as product people, I think.
I agree. Yeah, we just spoken when we spoke with Stephanie Nguyen. I believe Stephanie Nguyen was also talking about exactly that, and that her and Lena Khan were both working with the federal government to make unsubscribing and clicking to cancel those regulations happen.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Brian, that was true where Stephanie did mention too that, the reason why the government actually has to kind of intervene is because of our bad behavior as companies who may not have any governance or guardrails around, how to run your company, which is just like unfortunate that you need like some, big brother on top of you to say, hey, this is, you can't do this. So let's kind of maybe transition a little bit more. I mean, when we were thinking about this episode, my first thought, and maybe this is like a new topic, Brian, that we should note down, but just where like the future of CMS systems are going. So, like Salesforce or traditional CMS platforms, we're seeing the templatization of them, and just how like their legacy products are, gigantic and slow moving, and people have to use that software on a daily basis. And some companies, I've noticed, they're not even let's say using the software as it was supposedly designed, and I'm like quoting that, because of just how like just like so much friction in it. Yeah, I've just seen manual processes where people are, just in, a spreadsheet, and just doing it in that way instead of using these colossal CMS platforms. So with that, queuing up, because of how they have forced companies in these predefined journeys instead of adapting to individuals. Tod, do you have like a point of view on where the future is for CMS?
Yeah, and hopefully I don't tank their stocks while I'm trying to communicate something up here. I read recently an article that a guy created a new CRM over the weekend that was probably 10 times more powerful than what a Salesforce was. Now, in my mind, I'm going, well, I don't really think it's a Salesforce problem. I think the vast majority of the companies that you're talking about only use 5 to 10% of the capabilities that Salesforce has built in. And so as product managers, we listen to customer feedback. We add these features. They may be for 1 or 2 customers, but we think everybody's going to eventually use it. Nobody uses it beyond those 1 to 2 customers. And so you get this massive bloated software system.
Yeah.
So where I think the world is going to go quickly is extracting value out of those massive systems in 2 ways. One is that third-party data coming in. So once Tod Fetherling gets in my Salesforce CRM, I'm going to have multiple data streams connected to who Tod Fetherling is beyond the transaction that I have with Tod. And then the second thing would be to mine that. So whether it's a brand new application created with AI over the weekend or something sophisticated like Salesforce, what we need are agents, AI agents, mining that data and giving us back useful insights into that customer and what they need. Like in case of Salesforce, it could be a consumer person, like you were talking about, Eve, or it could be I'm a buyer at HCA spending billions of dollars on pharmaceutical drugs. And so you want to know everything you can, whether it's $99 transactions or $9 million transactions.
That's so interesting that you say that, because it seems as though, and hopefully, I mean, that's maybe a good use case for some of the AIs that have come along, is that they'll be able to go hunt for those features that are buried under God knows what. Because yeah, I think that a lot of these products like Salesforce and all these other CRMs have the CRMs and the CSMs as well, and we should define these for folks. There's content management systems, which is CMS, and then CRMs. Give me what's the acronym for CRMs again?
Customer relationship management.
Customer relationship management. So a lot of those tools are like, the features are so buried what in the user experience and the UI, in even the implementations. I know, Eve, I don't know about you, I've worked at companies that have been working with Salesforce integrations, and anytime we've hooked into Salesforce, it was always like getting in there was always just a big mess of like spreadsheet disaster world, where I was like, I don't understand how this works at all.
We would joke and just say that the Philosopher's Stone was hidden in Jira's interface.
Yeah. Somebody was talking about Windows 95 recently, and it made me think of, like, whenever I saw a Salesforce interface, it made me think of Windows 95. But the point that I was trying to get to is, like, that would be incredible. That would be a kind of a good use case for AI, is to surface some of those capabilities that are otherwise buried in those
Absolutely.
old UX.
Yeah, so to encourage really like UX designers that are listening, our product folks, and our developers, we are looking at this threshold that we're walking into, at least from like a mass customization. It was so expensive when I was working at Nielsen. It was so expensive, like upkeeping all of these interfaces that were being catered to individual customers, where for us the novelty we came up with was to bring all databases and all data selection into one interface, and that actually proved to be good, because NIQ did go public last year in the summer with that interface. Now, at the same time, I think with AI, this mass customization is, in my opinion, the future. So with that, how does what are companies doing right today that others may be missing? Like, what is something that we could emphasize that's going on that's good, that other people should pick up on?
Well, I think, I'll use Amazon as an example. Their knowledge of our family's purchasing behavior right now is second to none. I got on the site looking for a very small thing to buy yesterday, and I was able to find it, and they connected it to a past purchase that I had done years before. And so that level of sophistication, I think, is where others need to go and invest. And part of it is getting enough history to be that smart about it, right? And that's where I think you've got to connect third-party data into what I would call bit streaming these transactions to be true mass customization, where the interface is dynamic. So if I come to your website, I'm going to be presented the website in my context, versus the next person who's going to come is going to get presented with an entirely different interface, both driving the same thing. And I'll go back to what we talked about earlier. Things work really well when the customer and the provider are have a mutual benefit that we're both trying to get to. When we get to that state, that's where there's harmony, that's where revenues go up, that's where profitability goes up, and customer satisfaction goes up at the same time. Nobody's trying to take advantage of anybody. Both of us are trying to help each other get to where we want to get to. I'll blame a little bit on consumers because consumers are fickle, and oftentimes we don't give time to give the feedback. And then one other thing on my soapbox is sometimes the feedback, like through site reviews and whatnot, is not going to be positive. And as a business owner, you can't get mad when you get negative feedback. You've got to address that and make it better so that those people don't have it. I've had experiences recently where I went to a coffee shop, posted a bad review, owner got all upset with me, and I'm like, well, hey, I have a perspective too as your customer, and they didn't want to hear it. And so there's a lot to unpack there, but I think if we're going to live in an AI generated mass customization
Say
that
that 3 times fast.
we've really got to pay attention to the end goal, which is how do I get my customer and my business in sync going down the same road?
Why, you don't trust websites that have 5-star reviews like all over the place?
I
You
mean,
don't like that?
those are the ones I don't trust the most.
I thought you were going to say Costco, given that they were 633% off.
Honestly, I mean, there was someone that mentioned, they were like, yeah, I mean, you're right. Any platform that has all these kind of five-star reviews, first of all, why is that rating system still a part of our, kind of componentry? Like, where is like the individualization when it comes to actual honest feedback, right? And why is it the star ratings and just comments?
I
Yeah,
think
it's just
I think that pattern, a lot of that pattern comes from there's this whole kind of Yelp. Have you guys heard of the whole Yelp thing where it's like you only leave a Yelp review if you are friends with the person and it's their restaurant, or you really love the restaurant, or you really hate the restaurant, or you really hate the people that work there. Like it's basically like it's complete love and hate is like where the lines go through. And then of course there are like aspiring writers that they will like write their
oh yeah, that's right.
the median reviews.
That's absolutely right. I remember that Yelp used to, create events for their writers. There was like people that would just come to
Yeah.
events and just write for Yelp in their free time. It was like a hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it came also from our market research backgrounds. 5 stars is the Likert scale, either 5 or 7. And they do that so that there's a midpoint. So you have to pick positive or negative, right? It all sets up sort of that, some of what you just referred to in the Yelp situation is part of that me generation that we keep fueling maybe to our own detriment. And so it's probably a good time for product management people to take a step back and refocus. What I think is more important even, and you and Brian touched on it, is sentiment analysis. So don't give me a star rating, just give me all the content about your experience and I'll analyze it myself,
Absolutely.
which could be far more useful.
Well, yes, because I do want to know, is there are if I'm going to purchase this skincare product, and maybe the skincare product is something of an investment for me. Well, I'd like to know, not that this is negative, but that hey, some customers do have allergic reactions, and what customers do, and am I one of those? Like, let me assess that based on my individual preferences. So those are things that are still very crucial that I think companies want to avoid. So maybe this is a great question too, is what changes in how teams make decisions when moving from segments, these current customer segments, into individuals?
Well, hopefully I'll have a book published on that very question in about 3 months.
Okay.
That's where I've been spending all my time on the last 6 months is decision making and how executives are prone to make a lot of gut decisions instead of taking the time to analyze the data and make the right decision. And so I think we're at this, I think this podcast is very timely because we're at this tipping point where I have to start making some better decisions about the customer journey, profitability, revenue growth. And unless I'm tracking those decisions, then you're going to be pretty prone to make repeated mistakes.
Such a good point. You know, one of my design mentors one time when we were talking once said, and I think every designer should also hear this, is like, just slow down. Sometimes you just gotta slow down and just take the time to think and not move ahead so fast at lightning speed.
Yeah, and I think that manifests itself into startup world, into tech debt. I am this is going to be unpopular to say. I've already said it before in public, and I've gotten ridiculed about it. But this fast to failure concept, the opposite for me is slow down, spend a little bit more time planning, and I might have fewer failures in my implementation. And so I think we've embraced that maybe to a fault, whereby we need to get people to slow down and do some more research before they launch into something. Would have saved Target a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. And so, with a company like Target sitting on these legacy systems, what do they do tomorrow so they aren't repeating this cycle that they're in today?
Well, from my perspective, number one is customer engagement. Like, you need to go listening tours, customer focus groups, whatever it takes. You need to go have an intimate relationship with your customers if you want to play in this game. The other example that for me was an abysmal failure was a online radio station, and they had a physical station in San Francisco called KFOG. For hippies, it was the best music station of all time. They introduced me to Matt Nathanson. I actually got to go see him at the courthouse in Nashville playing on a Thursday night. It was everything you wanted in a customer relationship. And one day they decided to change the format and went to like sophomoric humor, and like they were dead 3 months later. Like,
Wow.
a radio station that had been around for generations was gone in 3 months. And that's what happens when you don't listen to your customers and do the right things.
Absolutely, Todd. I mean, Brian, there's been several podcasts where, lots of what we see is these kind of operations or MBA type individuals coming in this growth mindset of how can we meet quota for next year. And at the same time, what they're doing is they're just ruining, let's say just beloved brand, or something that's been around as a legacy for generations, just because of profit.
Yeah, or it's just the what Todd was saying is like the instinct to react fast without thinking of like, well, what will the consequences be? And we see that with we've talked about Roblox and Robinhood, and
Right.
we're talking about Target today, and we just see this
Skylanders.
Skylanders. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, just to wrap up here. So what we're really kind of getting to the bone of is that these companies don't necessarily have just a technology problem. What they're missing is an understanding of their customers, right? And so the past was, being more templatized and generic. What we're really focusing on is how the future is going to be this personal experience, especially now with AI kind of lifting the heavy lift of, the time it takes in order to figure out your customers here. So any kind of last words? I mean, Todd, what is the book that's coming out in 3 months?
Oh
Would
yeah.
like to know.
The title of it is Decision Sciences. I think it's going to be the occupation that follows data sciences. And for a leaving thought here, you just talked about the stages of analytics. So there's sort of basic analytics of descriptive analytics, like what did my customer do? And a lot of people think turning that into personalization is customization, probably not. Then we get into diagnostic. Why did something happen? We get into predictive, like Eve's going to buy this next product the next time they visit, right? Ultimately, what you're referring to is prescriptive analytics. So using technology, I agree with you, like technology is not the problem. It's the understanding is the problem. And translating that into customization real time for each of my customers, that is nirvana, where we're all trying to get to.
This is so great, Todd. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Thanks,
All right,
Todd.
you guys. Yes.
All right.
We'll
Talk
see
to
you
you later.
guys next time.
Like, subscribe, and follow, or become our next victim of bad UX.
UX Murder Mystery is a joint production of Eve, User Experience Design Agency, and Crowley UX, where systems meet stories. It's hosted by Brian J. Crowley and Eve Eden. Edited by Kelsey Smith. Intro animation and logo design by Brian J. Crowley. Music is by Nicholas Lee. You can follow us at UX Murder Mystery. You can email us at questions@uxmurdermystery.com. UX Murder Mystery is a copyright 2025, Brian J. Crowley and Eve Eden. Thanks for listening.